Thomas Grant needed air desperately. The formal reception aboard the Valkyrie Royal Station was beautiful, elegant, and absolutely suffocating. As a junior diplomat in the human delegation, Thomas had spent 3 hours navigating complex social protocols, trying not to offend anyone from a species whose customs he was still learning. He slipped away from the grand hall, following corridors until he found a quiet garden terrace. A peaceful space with bioluminescent plants and a stunning view of the gas giant the station orbited. Thomas sank onto a bench, closing his eyes, breathing deeply. When he opened them, he realized he wasn't alone. Across from him, perhaps 3 meters away in what he now recognized as a private meditation alcove, sat a Valkyrie woman. She was striking, pointed ears adorned with formal jewelry, luminescent markings along her temples and neck glowing soft blue, elegant features that marked her as nobility. Then Thomas noticed the specific pattern of her jewelry, the particular shade of her formal robes, the attendants who'd been standing discreetly nearby but had withdrawn when she raised a hand. Queen Seraith Valhen, ruler of the Valkyrie Dominion, and Thomas had just accidentally invaded her private meditation space. Horror flooded through him. He started to stand, stammering apologies. "Stay," the queen said quietly. Thomas froze. "Your Majesty, I didn't realize. I should go." "I said stay." Her voice was gentle but carried unmistakable authority. "Unless you'd prefer to return to that reception." "No, Your Majesty. I mean, the reception is lovely, but suffocating." A small smile touched her lips. "Yes, I find them exhausting as well." Thomas didn't know what to say. Was this a test, a trap? Should he flee anyway? Queen Seraith seemed to read his confusion. "Sit, Thomas Grant. If you leave now, I'll have to return to that hall and endure another 3 hours of formal pleasantries. If you stay, I have excuse to remain here longer." "So really, you'd be doing me a favor." She knew his name. The Queen of the Valkyrie Dominion knew his name. Thomas sat slowly, carefully, trying to remember proper protocol for addressing royalty. His mind went blank. "You're with the human diplomatic delegation," Seraith continued, saving him from his panic. "Junior attaché, I believe." "Yes, Your Majesty." "How are you finding Valkyrie customs?" "Overwhelming, honestly. I've been studying for months, but actually navigating formal events, there's so much I don't understand. I'm terrified of accidentally offending someone." Seraith's markings shifted to warmer tones. "You're honest. That's rare in diplomatic circles." She paused. "What confuses you most?" "The rank signifiers. I can never tell who I should defer to, what level of formality to use. And the gift-giving protocols are impossible. I brought what I thought was appropriate, and apparently it signaled something I didn't intend." "What did you bring?" "Flowering branch from Earth. I thought it was beautiful, culturally significant. Apparently, it suggested romantic interest." Seraith laughed, actual, genuine laughter. "Yes, flowering branches are courtship gifts among Valkyrie. Who did you give it to?" "Ambassador Kelith." "Oh no," but she was still smiling. "He's 300 years old and very properly bonded. He must have been very confused." "He was extremely polite about it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Seraith asked, "Do you miss Earth?" "Sometimes. The complexity here is different. At home, I understood social rules instinctively. Here, everything requires conscious effort." "And yet you came here anyway. Why?" Thomas considered. "Because understanding other species matters. Because we can't build real cooperation without genuine connection. And because..." He stopped, realizing he was being too informal. "Continue." "Because I wanted to know if connection was actually possible. If beings as different as humans and Valkyrie could understand each other meaningfully." Seraith's markings glowed warmer. "And, is it possible?" "I think so. This conversation feels real. More real than the formal ones inside." "Yes," she agreed quietly. "It does." They talked for another hour. About cultural differences, about the challenges of diplomacy, about small things that had nothing to do with politics. Seraith asked about Earth seasons. Thomas asked about Valkyrie poetry. Finally, attendants appeared discreetly, signaling that the Queen's absence was being noted. Seraith stood with visible reluctance. "I should return. Thank you, Thomas Grant." "For what, Your Majesty?" "For the first genuine conversation I've had in months. For not being afraid of me. I was terrified initially. But you stayed anyway." Her markings showed warm gold. "That matters." She left, attendants falling into formation around her, leaving Thomas alone on the terrace wondering if that had really happened. Over the following weeks, Thomas kept encountering the Queen in unlikely places. A library alcove where he was researching Valthari customs, a quiet observation deck, another garden terrace during a different formal event, always away from crowds, always when she seemed to need escape from royal duties. At first, Thomas thought it was coincidence. Then he realized she was seeking him out. Their conversations deepened. She asked about his life before diplomacy, his family on Earth, his hopes for his career. He asked about the weight of ruling, about what she sacrificed for duty, about whether power was worth its cost. Seraith revealed her isolation in careful increments. Every interaction filtered through protocol. Every relationship calculated for political advantage. She couldn't trust advisors not to have agendas, couldn't befriend other royalty without diplomatic implications, couldn't pursue genuine connection without it becoming political leverage. "You're the first person in years who talks to me like I'm just someone," she admitted during one conversation. "Not the Queen, not a political piece. Just Seraith. I still call you Your Majesty," Thomas pointed out. "In public, but here," she gestured at the quiet library where they sat, "you argue with me about Valthari poetry interpretations. You laugh when I'm ridiculous. You treat me like an equal. You are an equal, hierarchically different but equal in personhood." Her markings glowed warm. Human philosophy. Universal philosophy, I'd argue. Perhaps. Thomas understood the gift he was being given, the Queen's trust, her genuine self, the person behind the crown. He also understood the danger. This was far beyond his diplomatic authority. If anyone knew, he was having regular private conversations with the Valthari Queen. One evening, at another formal reception, Thomas watched Seraith across the crowded hall. She was surrounded by advisors, looking exhausted and trapped. Their eyes met. She looked away quickly, but he'd seen the plea. Hours later, he found her alone on a terrace, the same one where they'd first met. She was standing at the railing, her markings dim with exhaustion. "They want me to formalize a political alliance," she said without preamble. "Through bonding, advantageous match, strengthens our position with the southern territories. Do you want to?" "Want is irrelevant. I'm the Queen. My personal preferences don't matter." Thomas moved to stand beside her. "That's not true. You're still a person. Your happiness matters." "Does it, when weighed against the stability of the Dominion?" "Yes, because queens who sacrifice everything eventually break, and that serves no one." Seraith turned to face him, her markings flickered with complex emotions. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's true." She reached for his hand, held it gently, a gesture of intimacy that would be scandalous if anyone saw. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Just stay. I can't bear going back in there alone tonight." Thomas squeezed her hand. "I'll stay." They stood together in silence, her hand in his, looking out at the stars. No words needed. Just presence. Just connection. Just two people finding refuge from their respective loneliness in each other's company. The request shifted everything. Thomas understood that Seraith wasn't asking for a moment. She was asking for something more, ongoing companionship, genuine connection, someone who saw her as a person rather than a crown. But this was dangerous territory. She was a queen, he was a junior diplomat. The power imbalance was vast, the political implications enormous. The next time they met privately, Thomas asked carefully, "What are you asking for, really?" Seraith's markings showed vulnerability. "I don't fully know, just that your presence makes my isolation bearable. That talking to you feels like breathing after being underwater. That I think about our conversations constantly." She paused. "Is that inappropriate?" "Probably, but I feel the same." "What do we do about it?" "I don't know." They began meeting regularly, always in private, always careful. Their relationship deepened into something neither could fully name. Not romance exactly, they never crossed certain boundaries, but profound emotional intimacy. A partnership of souls across the vast gap of their positions. Seraith's advisors noticed her mood improving. Human diplomats noticed Thomas being granted unusual access to royal spaces. Rumors began circulating. Thomas's superior confronted him. "What's your relationship with the Queen?" "We talk. She finds human perspective valuable for diplomatic matters." "You meet her privately, regularly. That's not normal diplomatic consultation." "She's isolated, I provide. Companionship without political agenda." That's precisely the problem. You're a junior diplomat. She's the most powerful being in the Dominion. This is inappropriate on every level. End it or I'll reassign you to a different post. Thomas brought this to Seraith in their next meeting. She listened silently, her markings cycling through emotions, distress, anger, resignation. They're right to be concerned, she finally said. This is inappropriate. I'm putting you in an impossible position. I don't care about appropriate. I care about you. But I have to care. I'm the queen. My actions affect millions. Her markings dimmed to sadness. Perhaps we should end this for your sake. Is that what you want? No, but what I want is secondary to what's right. Then let me decide what's right for me. I choose to stay, whatever the consequences. Seraith looked at him with such gratitude and anguish mixed. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your career for my loneliness. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your only genuine connection for political appearance. They sat in silence, both recognizing the impossible situation. Finally, Seraith made a decision. I won't hide this. I won't pretend you don't matter to me. If we're going to continue, it will be acknowledged publicly. Officially. Her markings showed determination. I'll create a position for you, personal advisor to the Queen. It will protect you professionally while acknowledging our connection. That's politically risky. Everything worthwhile is. Thomas felt the weight of what she was offering: public acknowledgement, official protection, her willingness to face political criticism for him. Are you certain? Yes, you've given me something invaluable. The least I can do is ensure you're not punished for it. Seraith made the announcement at a formal council session. She created the position of personal advisor to the Queen, a role specifically for Thomas, granting him official status in her court. The reaction was mixed. Some advisors accepted it as the Queen's prerogative. Others questioned the wisdom of elevating a junior human diplomat to such proximity to power. Human diplomatic corps was stunned. Thomas went from minor attaché to having direct access to the Valkyrie Queen. But the position was official, undeniable, and protected him from accusations of impropriety. Over the following year, their relationship continued evolving. Thomas became genuinely valuable politically. His human perspective helped Seraith navigate diplomatic challenges with human governments. But more importantly, he remained her refuge. They met regularly now, openly, sometimes discussing policy, often just talking about everything beyond politics, art, philosophy, personal fears, and hopes. Seraith's isolation eased. She had someone who saw her clearly and chose to stay anyway. Thomas found purpose beyond his initial diplomatic ambitions, helping someone extraordinary bear the weight of power. They navigated boundaries carefully. Their relationship remained platonic, intensely close but never crossing lines that would complicate things further. It was enough. The connection, the trust, the mutual support. At another formal reception, a year after that accidental meeting, Thomas deliberately sat across from Seraith in a quiet alcove during a break. She smiled, recognition of how far they'd come. He took her hand this time, a gesture now familiar between them. I'm staying, he whispered, for as long as you'll have me. I know, her markings glowed warm gold. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For staying when you could have left. For making my isolation bearable. Thank you for trusting me, for letting me in, for being brave enough to acknowledge this publicly. They sat together, hands clasped, comfortable in silence. What started as accident, a junior diplomat unknowingly invading a queen's private space, had become choice, became partnership that honored both duty and genuine connection. Seraith still ruled with authority. Thomas still navigated complex diplomacy, but they faced their respective